the first thing that you would notice is that, okay, so initial commit, so it looks correct. Okay, now one of the things that you might have a little bit of challenge, no? Okay, so most likely what you have done is, okay, you had now time to do activity as already discussed to you. And you look at exercise one, okay, create a program that asks for 10 integers. Afterwards, divide and display navigation menu and perform the following. Okay. And then as provided in the instruction, you have a table so that first it will help you understand what is the input and output that is expected from the checker. And also number two is that it also helps you a lot in understanding the sample problem or in the exercise itself. No? So there's a lot of sample tables. So let's see on how it looks like. So for example, a prompt will show up as a number. You would display it as 10. You would write those 10 numbers. Okay. And then you would display the menu as discussed here. Okay. And then once you click one, as is said here, display the numbers. So you'd simply display the numbers. Okay. So, and then perhaps one way to do it is just explore the other sample inputs and outputs. That's one way to do it. But maybe one other way that you can do it is, given this row one, it seems that, okay, it seems trivial, no? So maybe you want to get started, no? Hey, now the thing is, okay, so now you know that you already provided with the code, and what you will show up is a little bit different from what you have experienced. Why? Well, to get started, why is it that maybe I'm guessing if I'm the student and I'm coming from your place, my guess is that, okay, that's kind of unusual because number one, you get some set of codes. And number two is as if okay, even the main function is already provided. That's weird, maybe because given that your context is that most cases you are already expected to always start from scratch. Di ba? Another thing is that you already have two sets of functions. So it seems that, okay, it seems that this is a little bit different, no? Okay, now, another thing that you could have tried perhaps at this moment is that you started to start running your code, if I'm not mistaken. No? So let's start to run the code itself. So how would you do that? So let me just try to get one. Okay. So I'm gonna use this one na lang ha. So it's almost the same. Mm, ayun. Okay, so this one. So once you start to sige, let me use na lang the one with the trees. Okay, so once you start to open the files, I'm using Mac. So bear with me. So if you're using DevC, obviously it looks different. So once you open the file, maybe one thing that you would do is to start running the code and start to try and run the code. And then, number 1045. Again, I do recommend if you're already provided input and output, just try to copy and paste. You can actually do that. Choice. Okay. So now, once you start running the code, you would notice now you can follow this one up until choice one, but it seems that it's not displaying anything. Okay, so what you've encountered and now you realize, okay, it seems that there's something missing. But when you look at the code, it seems that nothing is missing. Okay, So let me know no, if we're on the same page. No, okay. So, but most likely, if you do that, if you did some trial and error, eventually, what you will end up is that there's something missing. Okay. So now, how do we resolve the problem? Okay. So, well, let me introduce to you how to debug a code when. So what I'm trying to introduce to you is to how to think in terms of functions, right? How to think in a more uh, different, how each functions can interact with each other function. This is really just really simple, but I hope that helps you a lot to think differently. No, so the first thing that you can do, no, if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to get started, I'm gonna give you a tip. No, this is very important our until module 3. No, okay, is that if you don't know how to get started, always look for the main function. Okay, the main function. Why? Because it is the first function, in case that you forgot, or in case it wasn't taught to you. It's the first function that will be called by the compiler. Okay, so in this case po, again, a main function is a function. Okay, so okay, so but it's the main. Okay, so this is the entry point, basically, how to run the program. It's always the entry point, and this is the reason why the main is a reserved name. Okay, so okay, so now that you have understand that, so here's how. Let me walk you through on how the compiler thinks. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, so the compiler would always read the code from top to bottom. Okay, okay, so read. Take note of my word. It's read. No, so I'm just gonna read through this. Okay, number sign include stdio.h. Okay, so when I read number sign include, what that means is that I'm just gonna copy paste this file. No, this is the content of stdio.page. It looks weird, but that's how it looks like. So I'm just gonna copy and paste that content into this file. That's what it means by include. Okay, but I'm not gonna necessarily copy paste it. It's just during the compilation, I'm gonna temporarily copy paste it in here. Okay, and this is how we're able to use printf, because the printf is declared inside the stdio.h. Okay, you can actually see it here now. Ayan. This is where it's declared. No? Anyway, so next one is number sign include lby ec2a.h. All right, what is this lby ec2a.h? Right? It seems it's not, it doesn't sound like a custom file, or as it's not a, it's not a built-in file, because it's lbyec2a.h. I hope that gives you, using context clues, no, you know that this is something that is built just for your class. No, and then it should also give you a clue that this is angle brackets and this is uses double quotes. Okay, now if you don't know what all those means, is that double quote means it's within the same directory or within the same folder. Okay, directory is also known as folder. Okay, so for example, let's open the file and show it to you. Okay, it's here. Okay, it's in the same folder as lab1 x1.c. Okay, in VS Code, it will show up here. In DevC, just open the folder as I've shown to you, and using your Windows Explorer and navigate to that folder, and you should see it. Okay, and then what you would get is that this is how it would look like. You can double click it in DevC and it should show up like this. All right. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna copy paste this file, okay, towards this file. Okay. Next, I'm gonna read through this. Okay, so the compiler says, okay, you want to define a function called get choice, and this is how it will be defined. Okay, no problem. Okay, next you will define a process array of type void, return void, and it will have two inputs, the array and size, and read through this. Okay, no problem. And then it just reads, man, it doesn't execute it, it just reads it. No, and now once it sees the main function, okay, it already has all the context that you want. Okay, so that once I run this as my entry point, okay, so now I'm gonna get started. Int num array 10. Okay, as a compiler, I know what that means. I need to declare an integer, a variable named array, okay, and of type integer, and it will have a size 10. I will allocate 10 integers on this num array. Okay, next, I will invoke or call the function get numbers. Okay, where did I remember get function? The main function would simply call to the compiler, hey compiler, I want to call the function get numbers, and it will have two inputs, 10 and num array. Okay, note the num array, I declared it here. So it would be a 10, and this variable, this array variable of size 10. Okay, and then once the compiler reads that or sees that command from the main function, it will check through its memory, its stack. Okay, where did I see that get numbers? Okay, so once you scroll on top, okay, let's see if get numbers is here, get numbers is here, get numbers is here. So the compiler sees, okay, it's not in the main, it's not in lab1 x1.c. Where is it? Okay, so maybe it's in my include. So now I go here, number sign include stlbyec2a.h. Let's see, I copy pasted it anyway, so it's in the same file. And lo and behold, I found the get numbers here. Oh, okay. So and then the compiler would say to the main function, oh, okay, no problem. I will run that function. So the compiler now will call get numbers, get numbers. Okay, I'm giving you now this input, 10 and num array. So I'm gonna send it to you here. So 10, then num array, and now execute it. So now the get numbers now will say, okay, I'll execute it using the input you provided. So therefore, this one becomes 10. This now becomes num array. Okay, and therefore you start running the code. So int I, okay, print f, so that's how you get the numbers equal sign. And then for loop, obviously you get the 10 numbers, and then you store each of those to the at index 0 up until less than 10. So that would be from 0 to 9. So therefore I would store each number from 0 to 9, and therefore I would store at this are numbers, which is also num array in this context, and therefore you store it at num array, and that's how you get the 10 numbers. Okay, now once it's done, it will show it here, and then again it was declared as void. So the get numbers will now say to the compiler, hey, I'm done. So I'm a void function, so you don't expect me a return, but I'm done. And then the compiler will say, okay, you're done. So then you go now to the compiler will now say to the main function, hey, get numbers is done here. There's no output, but it's the processing is already done. Then the main function will say, okay. Then we move forward now to line 79. Okay, at line 79, the main function will tell the compiler, hey compiler, I want to call this function process array. Okay, it will have two inputs, the num array, okay, and 10. Okay, and then the compiler now will check through its stack, memory stack again. Okay, where is this process array function? Did I read it before? Have I read it before, this function before? I will scroll through, and lo and behold, he found out that the function is here inside the lab1 x1.c, and therefore it would acknowledge the main function. Okay, main function, no problem. We can process that. I'll give me the input. I'll send it to the process array. Okay, so now you provide the input now of num array. Again, do note that in this is already modified here. That's the little tricky part there po. We already modified it. So we pass those modified values to the process array, and then it will provide an input of 10. Okay na? And then let's now, and then the compiler now will tell the process array, hey, process array, please execute now your function. Here is the input. This would be the num array. And then this would have a size of 10. And then the process array now will say, okay, no problem. Let's try to run it. Now go now inside the process array. You go now inside the function. Line 45, you now see choice. And then the choice equals get choice. Okay, and now process array will tell the compiler, hey, compiler, I need to call a function called get choice. Okay, and then it doesn't have any input. Okay, and the compiler now will check its stack. Can you see the pattern? It's really that simple. But we'll check its stack. Okay, did I read that get choice before? Oh, it's here. Okay, line 4. And then compiler will tell the process array, hey, no problem. I can tell that to get choice. Okay, so now compiler now will call the get choice, run your code, run your thing, and then I'm expecting, and then give me the output of type int, whatever that is. Okay, and then get choice will hear that and then run the code and then type whatever you want. So choice 1. So now it will be stored at choice and it will return choice. And now get choice will say to the compiler, hey, I'm done. And as you know, you're expecting an int return type. So I'm returning you the value of, in your case, you entered in your user 1. I'm gonna give you 1. Okay. Okay, and then compiler would say, okay, and then you will give it now to the process array. Hey, process array, here's the output of get choice. Here's the return. That's why it's called a return. I'm returning you now the value of 1. Okay, so now it will be stored, and then process array would receive that and then store that to choice. Okay, now let's now go here, line 46, and now you're back at process array. That's why it's called return. You're returning. You're returning back to the function. Okay, so choice equals 1. Okay, if choice equal 1, again, conditional statement, I will call display original. In our case, we selected 1. So this is true. Now we would call this function. Now again, process array would talk to the compiler. Hey, compiler, I need to call this function called display original. Okay, it will have 2 inputs, the array and size. I'm gonna give it to you. Okay, and then the compiler now would check its stack. Again, stack, its memory, its whole stack. What he read from top to bottom. And check it out. Okay, where did I find, have I seen any display original function before? First, in your case, just scroll up. Okay, it's not in lab1x1.c. Maybe it's inside the number sign include. Let's check it out. And lo and behold, display original is here. Where is it? It's in lbyec2h. And now the compiler would say, oh, okay, yes, I found there's a display original function. No problem. Let's try to call that function. Okay. So now give me the input. So the compiler and then the process array now will get that input and then call now display original. Hey, display original, call execute your function. Here is your input. It's array and size. And now display original will tell, okay, compiler, I will run that code. And now if you can see it here, it's blank. Okay, so now if it's blank, okay, and then display original would say to the compiler again, hey compiler, I'm done. And note, I have a void return, so you don't expect me any return, but my processing is done. And now the compiler will simply acknowledge, okay, no problem, I acknowledge that, so let's move forward then. Okay, and now we go here now, since if this is true, we skip all of these things. Okay, then we're done. And then the process array will say now, hey, compiler, I'm done running the process array function. Note that my return is void, so don't expect any output as we have discussed before. So now I'm done. Okay, and then the compiler will now tell to the main function, hey, main function, process array is already done. Okay, there's no output, but it's done. Okay, and the main function will say, okay, and then now go to the next line, return 0, and you're basically saying to the main function, telling to the compiler, hey, I'm done also. We're good. Okay, that's it. That's how you run the code. Okay? You understand now on any questions and concern? I hope that clears things up why it is blank. Okay? Walang tanong?